And then Olivia, we have to submit our 2 nominees at the end of the month. And I'm sorry, at the end of September. And so we have to have the campus deadline on Friday, September 11th, so that we can then interview the candidates on the 18th. I should have put that date on there as well. And then give the candidates time to work on their applications a little while before we submit them. And I know Shania is going to talk a little bit more about her application, but this is kind of a small award. It's a little bit unusual because not all of the English speaking union chapters around the country offer these scholarships to to Kentucky students to go abroad and to teachers, but this is a way the Kentucky chapter does it. So if you get the award, they send you abroad for summer school, and it's typically, I think it's like a 2-week summer school and 1 week in London. Was that what it was for you, Shania, or was it 1 week of summer school and then 1 week in London?
I had 3 weeks of studies, I think, and then I think I had 1 week of London, or it might have been 2 weeks of study and 1 week in London. I thought it was
okay. I think it can vary depending on the institution. It can be 2 or 3 weeks and then a week in London. So, but I don't think anybody's there really for more than a month. That would be the outside, and it would probably be 3 weeks. Yes, so one of those weeks is a week in London, and you get a stipend, and we help pay that, and that covers your housing and your meals and travel. Well, it says the cost of travel and incidental, so they may prepay your lodging. So that gives you an opportunity to pretty much do whatever you want in London, or take a train to Scotland, or take a train to, you know what I mean? That's one of the wonderful things about this, is that you can travel all around the United Kingdom. Now, I don't know if you can leave the United Kingdom because I don't know what the visa permits. Shania, did you do that? Did you try to pop over to Paris for the day or something?
So me and Katie had contemplated it, but we didn't actually do it. I can't remember if there was like any kind of specific restriction or permission. A lot of people were doing it, so I don't know.
Okay, so maybe then it's a tourist visa, in which case you could have.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was a student visa or a tourist visa. And Olivia, I know you are a junior, so that's good because that's what it takes to be eligible. Although I noticed today on their website, they said juniors or seniors with 1 year remaining. So I guess for someone who, I don't know if they're talking about the 3rd year students who actually have senior credits, which is true of a lot of undergraduates anymore with AP credits and things, or if they're actually talking somebody who's in a 5-year program. But you have to have at least 1 year remaining on the time that when you would come back. So you would do it in the summer, and then you have to be coming back to your school for a year because they want you to serve as a recruiter for the next ones. So, and on the screen, you can see some of the programs that you can do. And so they tend to fall in the humanities and social sciences. I don't think there is any STEM coursework. Somebody couldn't go and do a biology elective, for example. Most of the websites are not updated. I checked. And so you have to go based on last year's information, but that's pretty much always the case. We're going to record this and put this online, so you'll be able to have access. But down at the bottom there, I did put the link directly to the student application, which is a personal statement and some demographic information. And I think they ask you which courses you like best. They have several small answers. But there is a longer personal statement. You can write up to 3 pages, which is a little bit unusual, I think. And these are the 4 programs. And Shania, I know you were at Oxford. What exactly was your course?
I was in the History, Politics, and Society summer school, so I had a British politics class from 1900 to 1945, and then British political ideologies.
And I know that's a popular one, right? So did you have a lot of co-students?
Yeah, the history program was extremely packed. The English one was pretty packed too there, though. I think they said it was one of the biggest years that they had in terms of the amount of students.
Okay, great. So these are the programs, Olivia. You'll see you can look at different ones. So you can go to different institutions. And now, although I've been bringing Shania in on and off, I will let her talk about her actual experience, because I think that's the more interesting thing. And then we can always go back and talk more about the application, and we can answer any questions that you have, Olivia. So may I turn it over to you?
Okay. So as Dr. Whitlow said, I am Shania, and I was one of the T-Lab scholars at Oxford the summer of my junior year. In terms of my background, I come from a very small town, and the biggest city that I'd ever really navigated independently was Lexington. And even then, I had a lot of help from like advisors and the first gen community on campus. So I was really hesitant to study abroad. I don't know if this would apply to you, Olivia. You may have traveled more than me, but I'm really glad that I went to London and Oxford, even though I was frightened, because it kind of showed me that I had the ability to actually travel by myself and survive. And it helped me a lot, because coming to Columbus, I don't think my transition here would have been as seamless, since it's a bigger and kind of scarier city than Lexington. And it kind of gave me the tools that I needed to know how to navigate different places. It was very empowering. And another aspect that I would mention is it just like gave me more respect for other places, obviously, but it also gave me a greater appreciation for America and my home, because when I saw America for the first time again, it was just the most empowering feeling I've ever felt. And then I think this picture on the slide is just a photo from Westminster Abbey. That's something that we saw while we were in London. But then in terms of my program, I mentioned I was in History, Politics, and Society summer school, and I done British political ideologies and politics from 1900 to 1945. The way the courses is set up, it's reading, discussion, and lecture by the professor in very small groups, and you get your reading list during the summer. I didn't really read all of the books. It might differ if you're in English or another program, but I just done the ones that seemed like they would be the most relevant to the assignments that the professors had given us. And then the rest of the books are kind of like supplementary sources that I could use for my big research papers at the end, because you have 2 big research papers, one for each course. You get to choose your topic and everything. It just has to be within the confines of the class. I done mine on the Labor Party and liberalism. Somewhere in here, I have a plaque from the site of the Congressional Memorial Hall. I got to visit it in London.
There you go. I should have resized that. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's the site of the first meeting for the Labor Party. And it was just an amazing feeling after I'd been studying for 3 weeks in the basement of the Bodleian Library to be in the place where this history actually happened. Then I got really good marks on my essays, which astonished me. That's something else. That's another reason I would recommend this particular study abroad experience, since most of the schools are kind of more upper tier. It makes you feel more confident in your skills as a writer and a student when you have that positive affirmation from one of the professors at that level. I also learned a lot about different people's perspective, which was one of my big goals. Before I went, I had negative preconceptions and stereotypes that I'd been told in America about socialism, but I heard the viewpoints of like British people and Australian people and people from Greece and even people in different parts of America. And it totally changed my mind on the way that I looked at the issue, and it kind of helped me get rid of some of the stereotypes. Another aspect that I wanted to emphasize, the professors that will teach you are absolutely amazing. They're so kind and so relatable. I remember one night after our classes had all ended, our professor took us to this little pub in a working class neighborhood called Jericho. The sun was setting. It was so beautiful. And it was just one of the best nights that I've ever had. Honestly, it helped me form a better bond with the people that were there, and also Dr. Andrews himself. And this program is great because you make friends from all over the world. I met 2 of my best friends there are 2 of my best friends now. One is from Australia. Her name is Meg. And the other is from Indiana, and like obviously America, not another part of the world. Still far from
these people?
Yeah, and her name is Lisa. Lisa's the older lady. We went punting on the River Sherwell that day, which I'd highly recommend if you get to go to Oxford. It's awesome to know that there are other people out there who genuinely care about you. and are genuinely interested in who you are as a person in just a totally different geographic area. And then in terms of how you could prepare for the study of school, I mentioned earlier reading the books, but aside from the academics, I would also recommend maybe planning specifically what you want to do once you're in London. The ESU will tell you all this because they have a bunch of meetings like tea parties and things of that nature to prepare you. But you get the London pass, you'll probably end up buying that for like $200, and you can get into all of the places in London and all the sites for essentially free because you have that pass, and it's going to save you so much money. And if you get the London pass in the mail ahead of time, combined with like the card that'll get you onto the buses and stuff, it'll give you a big list, and you can actually plan. What I did, I actually planned my days that I was going to be in London using the sites that were on that list. And I found it helpful because when I got to London, I wasn't frantic and just trying to figure out what to do and missing out on certain sites because I already had that course of action kind of set up, which was great. And then in terms of the application and the interview, in the application, I'm sure you know this, but I would recommend just being as genuine as possible. If you don't feel something wholeheartedly, don't put it on there because they're going to ask you questions that are very tailored to everything you put on that CV and application. Like, I vaguely studied Hellenistic studies, and I'm so glad that I didn't put that on as my research interest, even though I was fascinated by it, because I would not have been equipped to talk about it. But they did ask me a question about Jane Austen and Enlightenment research interests that I have. It was an intellectually challenging question, but because I love both those things so much, I didn't feel utterly stumped, and I didn't really feel like I looked ignorant in my answer or anything of that nature. My personal statement, I wrote about a Holocaust survivor that I'd listened to give a speech at UK named Mr. Conrad Weiner, and I kind of connected what I learned about empathy in his speech to my own personal goals as a future attorney, and then also my personal goals as a student studying abroad in this program with the ESU. If you have any questions about specific interview prep, you can reach out to me on social media or just get my email from Dr. Whitlow, and I'd be happy to tell you like what kind of stuff they asked me. In terms of Oxford, we had day excursions that we got to go on. One of those was Chawton. I got to see Jane Austen's house. She's my favorite author. It was one of the best days of my life, and if I could move to Chawton, I absolutely would. And we also got to see Winchester Cathedral, which is where Jane Austen is buried, and it was also built in like 1066 by William the Conqueror, and it just had such a rich history. We got to take an entire tour of the whole cathedral. Then in terms of, I also went punting. I think I've mentioned that a couple times because it was one of the most exhilarating experiences I've ever had.
And this was the university, right? I may have mislabeled this.
Yeah, that was Exeter. That is a picture of the front of the dining hall. And then my staircase was like from the camera angle, the person taking the picture. So that's where I was. I'm
not sure. One of the pictures I couldn't get loaded. There we go.
Oh yeah, that actually is a good segue into London. I got to do so many different things in London. I saw the Shard, Buckingham Palace, the Banqueting House, Platform 9 3/4. Haven't read Harry Potter, but got to take a picture in front of the platform. I saw sites of Blitz raids. I saw Big Ben, just anything you could think of. My favorite experiences, though, I got to sit in on a live Supreme Court session, which was cool for me since I want to be an attorney in America. And I also got to see the Palace of Westminster. It's the most beautiful site that I've ever been to, honestly. They just have these huge paintings everywhere. It's very nice. And then the only drawback, whenever I talked to Dr. Whitlow and asked her like what I should talk about or what I should prepare to say, she asked me if there were any drawbacks to the program or any drawbacks to studying abroad more generally, to mention them. There weren't many, but the thing I would say, it was really hard for me to prepare to go since I never traveled this long distance and for this extent of time before. My flight, I actually ended up flying out of DC because it was way cheaper for me to get my flight at the airport there and get a hotel in DC than it was for me to fly out of Cincinnati. And it felt ridiculous for me to pay an exorbitant fee to go to Cincinnati when I could see all the sites in DC at the same time for free since it was cheaper. And because everything in DC is free. It's not really like London, but my flight just kept getting delayed that night because of weather. I don't know if the low price should have been indicative that that could happen, but it was a very stressful night. I ended up getting to my summer program late. I missed the entire first day of introductions, and I was just completely thrown into classes without any period of adjustment. That night at the airport, I was really upset, didn't understand really anything that was going on because I'd never been in an airport before, and my parents were back at the hotel and I was stressed out. But even that drawback of the flight mishap was really helpful to me because it showed me that I'm able to handle stressful situations better than I thought I could. And then finally, I think the biggest thing that I learned from this program that I would recommend for anyone to do, it really taught me that I'm doing okay in life. And what I mean by this, when I first got to Heathrow, I was overwhelmed and I went to the wrong spot. I was supposed to take my visa support letter over to this little desk where a man was sitting, and he was supposed to read it and be like, okay, this is legit. You're allowed to go into the country. I got confused and tried to go through airport gates, and the man was very mean to me. He made a statement that has really stuck with me. He said, oh, so you're studying abroad at the University of Oxford, to which I clearly said yes. And then he responded, well, you must be pretty lucky. It had to have been luck that got you in there. And that I was so baffled that he would say that to me. And I was so hurt because I felt like he was right because I was already so stressed out and I felt like I was doing everything wrong, but I just kept pushing through. And now in retrospect, even that not as great experience about study abroad is pretty great because it was like a poetic opening, because when I finished the program, I realized how wrong he was, and I realized how valuable this scholarship was for me. It just teaching me that I do have the ability to succeed and that I'm doing better than I give myself credit for. And I don't know if that's kind of what you wanted in terms of presentation. I know I rambled. If you want questions or anything of that nature.
No, I think that's wonderful. And I don't, oh, I have to stop the share, I guess. I think there are rude people everywhere. I'll just say that rather than commenting further on that gentleman. There are rude people everywhere. I'm really shocked that he would say that to you, since I'm sure you're not the only person who's ever been at the wrong desk in an airport. I've done that in domestic airports. But Olivia, before we go on, and are there some other questions that you would like to ask specifically about the application? And you're muted right now, so you might want to go ahead and unmute.
Like the campus application deadline is like, it's like pretty like fast, I feel like. So like, what does it like entail as far as like content? Like how many questions is like the application for like campus? Is it like different from like the main application?
It is the main application. You just
okay.
your version of the application.
Okay.
So Shania, I didn't, it was a personal statement, right? And then you had to fill out like a 1-page, a little bit about your information and your majors. And was it 1 letter of recommendation or 2?
I think it was 1. I know that they gave us like an application about our interest, and then we had to turn in a CV and then the personal statement, like you said, but I can't remember.
And maybe a copy of the unofficial transcript?
Yeah, that also. I want to say it was 2 because I think I barely made the deadline and I had to get my first gen advisor to write 1, and then I also had to get one of my history teachers to write 1. Or I could be wrong. It might have just been 1.
And I can try to pull up the application real quick and tell you, Olivia.
Because like I saw it from like the 2020 application pool, but I wasn't sure like if it was like updated due to like COVID or something like that.
As far as I know, they have not made changes in the application. It's been pretty standard for years. You know what I mean? Like they might change just a minor, but it's that 3-page personal, well, up to 3 pages. I don't remember how many pages you wrote, Shania, but they say 2 to 3, I guess, that you can write, and a transcript, either 1 or 2 letters then, and 2 letters. And so and what we just do it on campus, we just look at the same materials because, one, we have to interview how many ever candidates there are. We can only nominate 2. And the year that Shania went, both of the UK students were asked to be finalists for the interviews, and then both got the award. Although, was Katie at Oxford too, Shania?
Yeah, she was in the English program.
So you were both there, but you were doing separate studies. And then what we try to do is give you some feedback on that application for the students that we select to say, here's what we understand about the ESU in terms of what they're looking for, and maybe something on your application isn't clear. And so it's usually not a huge amount of work to do your revisions. You have about 2 weeks to turn it around for us to send over to them. So I can't remember, Shania, how much feedback did you get? Like, did you do radical changes on your application? Do you remember, or was it more modest? You're muted, by the way. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, I know. I just mute myself when I'm not talking. But I did not make any changes other than the fact I had to shorten my personal statement because, as you can tell, I'm a little bit verbose. So I went a little bit over the page requirement, but that's not really the only thing I edited.
So yeah, it's usually not that difficult. You put most of the work in preparing it for the campus deadline. So the 2 weeks, or the not quite 3 weeks, you have 2.5, I guess, or something, to prepare. And the deadline is typically, or the last few years, it's always been this early. So students have had to sort of start right when they get to campus and do it. It used to be that it was much later in the semester and we had more time to advertise, but the deadline was very similar for Shania last year. It was off by a day or something, but it was a very similar schedule.
The ESU is also one of the best programs that you can be involved with, not just the scholarship. I don't know if Dr. Whitlow said this, but the Kentucky branch sends more scholars than any other state in America to the TLAB program because of scholarship money. And it's also such a good networking opportunity because they're going to have you go to all of these. Well, I don't know how it will be in light of Corona. I think we're doing mostly Zoom sessions for the rest of the year, but it's a really good networking opportunity. You meet professors from all over Kentucky, just people in all kinds of different careers. So.
And they usually have, and again, this year, I don't know if they will do it, and I don't know if Shania will be able to come back, but they usually will have a very nice, like, some kind of a winter social meeting at the homes of one of the members, and they have a tea once a year. Is it a winter tea, or is that in the summer? I can't.
Yeah, we have tea for the Queen's birthday in the summer, but right now, even if you decide not to apply, which I hope you do, but we also have like these free events you can register for online where all of these authors across Kentucky are getting online over Zoom and just talking about their books and their experiences. I think the next one is a refugee who's going to be talking about his experiences.
And I actually think from that aspect of it, that's been nice this year. I wanted to do one of them and I didn't have time, but those things used to be people would drive to Louisville to participate in, and now hopefully they'll keep some of that stuff on Zoom so that their alumni that are going to be in different places in Ohio and different places can participate. But it's a very nice group of people, Olivia. It's mostly the organization is mostly centered in Louisville, and that's where the interviews are. And they're just very, very passionate about the United Kingdom, aren't they, Shania? And they really want to send Kentuckians, they want young people to know what it's like to study there. And they also send one teacher every summer. So they send like a middle school or a high school teacher to have that experience as well, so that they will come back and talk about it in their classroom. So it's a very neat award, and it's very distinct for the state of Kentucky. It's not done like this in other chapters, really. So are there other questions that we can bring up, or are there other things, Shania, that you think we should mention? You live on the campus, right? So you get to live in kind of a historic building. At least they look historic on the outside. I hope they're not that historic in the bedrooms, but
They are. I was actually in J.R.R. Tolkien's old bedroom when he studied at Exeter. They placed me in there randomly. So it's nice, though. The historic is a lot of staircases, but it's worth it.
and Oxford itself is not that big, right? So you were able to go around, you know, and see more of the campus and study in the library. You have access to the resources of that campus. If you choose Oxford, Cambridge would be the same if you choose Cambridge. Or, and I can't remember, just in terms of the finances, I think you did tell me, Shania, and I don't think I knew this until you told me, like it doesn't cover meals on the weekend, or was there something like that, or it only covered a few or something?
All of the logistics I have trouble remembering, but I don't remember like struggling for money when I was there, because once you register for study abroad through UK, you're also eligible for like so much of a financial aid loan or a financial aid grant. I think it was a grant. So I think I was mostly okay, but I remember there was something with the money, but I can't hardly remember what it was now.
That is one thing we should mention, Olivia. If you get this award, if you apply and get the award, you have to register with the UK Education Abroad program. And they require you to pay the fee to be registered as a study abroad student. Now, if you want to bring credits back, there is an additional fee. They require you to register for a 1 credit course. I think it's EAP 500 and something, but and that will help you bring back the credits. If you don't want credits or don't need them to graduate, and you only have to pay the 1 fee, which is like $50, but you don't have to register for the course. But you did register for the course, is that right, Shania?
My memory is so foggy, so don't quote me on any of this. But I think what happened is I think what it was is I couldn't afford like the EAP fee or something of that nature. But I had to be registered. I can't remember why I had to be registered in the course, but I remember that I had to.
Maybe you did for financial aid. I remember that.
Yeah, that's what it was.
For that. Yeah, I think for a financial aid reason, you had to be in the course.
And that's why I had enough money in Oxford, is because the financial aid pulled through.
That's right. That doesn't necessarily apply to every student. So it depends on the particular financial circumstance, I think. But that way Education Abroad knows where you are, and they can be in touch should we have a pandemic and people have to be pulled back from all around the world, which surely won't happen again next summer. I guess I should also say, Olivia, that Corona was not an issue for Shania. So she might have had flight issues, but she didn't have to deal with the pandemic. So, and right now, citizens in the US are not welcome in the European Union, although the UK is in the process of separating from the European Union. But so at this point in time, most fellowship awards and ESU, we're continuing as if it's going to be normal, as if there's going to be a summer program next year, as if you're going to get to go, you know. We're now, you know, circumstances could change that. We don't, Haley, I can't think of her last name at the moment, but there was a student who got the award and was supposed to go this past summer, and she could not go because she wasn't allowed to travel and do that. But I hope that you know, that we will either have a treatment or a vaccine so that won't be the case next summer. But of course, we don't know. We're just hoping for the best.
And to add something exciting, I was there when the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, was elected. I was in the lecture at the very moment he was elected. And I was also there like on the cusp of one of the big Brexit decisions, which obviously they didn't sort through. But that's just more exciting aspects.
It is. I've had other students tell me that too, that it's just for students who are interested in politics. It's a wonderful place to be. The student, the year or two before you, whenever they hosted the Summer Olympics, we had a student who was there during that time. And so they were able to go one of their days, they were able to go. I don't think they saw one of the major events. They saw something that, you know, there were tickets left over for, but still they got to participate. And I think for students, we've also had students who were in English, and who are really interested in literature, and that's equally rich and wonderful that people have talked about. So I think it's a great experience. I wish I could do it. You know, I wish they would let me apply, but it's a wonderful opportunity for students, I think. Now, do you remember, Shania, exactly when your dates were? Was it?
I remember I flew out July 5th because I ended up being in DC. I think it was the day before. And then I got back shortly before my birthday, which was around August 9th.
So one of the things is the summer schools vary a little bit from year to year, and they can be different depending on whether you go to Cambridge or Edinburgh or Oxford. So occasionally we'll have a student where it might not fit with their other summer plan. Let's say you wanted to do a summer-long research program, an NSF-REU, and you got an award for that. Well, they're not going to let you leave for 4 weeks, you know, in the middle of it to go to. So you do have to think about, but you don't have to think about that right now. You should go ahead and apply for the award. But if you get the award, then you have to think about how you're going to structure your summer, because it does tend to fall kind of in the middle of it. It's not like you're leaving immediately after your term finishes, and so that is one thing you have to think about if you had an employment or had another travel experience or something. You have to think, how can you put those things together? Other questions? When you applied to law school, did they ask you about this at all?
No, but I think it probably helped a bit. I think it added a little extra spice to my CV when I applied.
Good. All right. Well, thank you very much, Shania, for talking about your summer. I know you had a great experience there, and it was wonderful to get to work with you. And Olivia, I hope you will apply. I think it's just a terrific award. And I've never had a student who didn't come back just having had a fabulous time. And also the fact that you can choose what you want in London. And Shania chose things that were consistent with her interests. But we had a student who went a number of years ago, but she was a theater person, right? And so she did lots and lots of stuff related to her interests in the theater. So, which obviously London is a great place to be if you're interested in that. So they do not set out the course for you. Shania made all her own choices that week in terms of what she wanted to see and what she wanted to visit and do. And so that's something for you to think about, because it's a very, very, you're very autonomous that week. Now, Shania, your good friends from Oxford, they weren't with you that week then, right? So.
No, it was me and Katie, the other scholar who went with me. We were there together, and then also a girl named Hannah Bishop from Louisville who was studying at Cambridge. She was in London the same week as us, but it was basically me and Katie together.
Okay. Because you stay at a student residential hotel or something, right, for that week?
Yeah, we stayed at King's College on Great Dover Street. It was a little bit of a different type of area than Oxford or the rest of London, but it was a good little neighborhood. It was a nice experience.
Wonderful.